What's going on, everybody? It's Dan, Moonshine, the hillbilly hellraiser, screwing around with his camera real quick. Probably push a little too far too. There we go. Not that anyone wants to see me, but you're gonna see me anyway because this is the video. You clicked on it, dummy. But anyhow, how you doing? I'm doing well. Uh, it's past the holiday at this point, so hope everyone had a happy Thanksgiving. Heading into the work week, the normal work week for most people. For me, it's like halfway through the week, but nonetheless. Uh, so as you can see, I decided to jump back on the stream tard, do another one of these news and reviews deals. Some people seem to like it, so I figured, what the hell? I got some time to burn, so I'll go ahead and do this. I got a few stories to talk about that I thought were interesting and noteworthy. A couple album reviews, and then just probably just do my normal just babbling as I'm prone to doing. But I won't waste too much of your time. I'll get started here. First off, I was I was asked to do Shredbeard. If I think most of you are familiar with Shredbeard, Trevor, he's got a channel, and on Sundays he does a live stream. Sunday nights it's 8 p.m. My time, but 5 p.m. Pacific time. And he reached out to me, he and his producer Miss A, and they asked me if I'd be interested in doing what he calls his Mayhem Minute. So I was like, yeah, no problem. So that's this here. I'm not going to show you the whole thing. If you want to check it out, go check it out. But I figured I'd just point it out. He basically asked me to just do a quick little review of something that I had listened to this year, and then asked me to suggest something or talk about, or not talk about, but mention something that I had been spinning quite a bit that was from an underground label. So I did. I did a quick little 2 minute review of album that I reviewed earlier in the year, a band called Necromaniac. It's excuse me, give me a second. Seamancy, Malediction, and Rights Abominable. And so I just talked about that and kind of gave a brief overview. He asked me to do 2 minutes. I did 2 minutes and 8 and 1 second, which I was kind of annoyed with because I almost hit my mark, but nonethelse, uh, I got Cornette yelling at me. God damn it, Moonshine, you dumb hillbilly motherfucker! I'll kill you, you son of a bitch! You're worse than Russo. God damn it! But anyhow, um, so if you want, go check it out. Like I said, Shred and his co-host Toasty, they do a show every Sunday night at 8 p.m. That's why if you're watching this, I tried to set it up to where it would air before his thing went on. So if you're interested and you just want to hear a couple of metalheads talking about metal stuff and doing metal things, then this would be a nice little thing to watch and listen to. And then if you're getting ready to, something to pregame for Shred's thing, I just figured, hey, why not? What the hell? So that was that. And then let's let's move to the next thing here. You have to forgive me. I'm still working the StreamYard thing, trying to get that down pat. So next up, not to bring the mood down too much, but this was kind of a sad one. So apparently, and I should have my head examined for not knowing this off the top of my head, but 2 weeks ago on the 13th of November marked the 20-year anniversary of Eddie Guerrero's passing. I'm not sure how familiar some of you are with Eddie Guerrero, but Eddie was one of the finest pro wrestlers in the business, second generation superstar. Wrestled all over the world from Mexico to New Japan, or Japan with New Japan. Wound up in the States with ECW. Then he wound up in WCW, eventually went to WWF, WWE, and won the championship there. Had lots of memorable feuds and moments in the wrestling business throughout the years, whether it be his time spent in AAA, working with working with Love Machine Art Bar as Los Gringos Locos, or working in New Japan, doing all the cruiserweight, or not cruiserweight, but the Super Junior stuff that he did. Working under a mask as Black Tiger. His stuff with Benoit in Japan was excellent. That's probably for me some of my favorite stuff is from Japan was the Black Tiger Wild Pegasus stuff. Then fast forward ECW, the Malenko Guerrero Classic. That was some of the best stuff. It's some of the first stuff I saw when I first started watching ECW. Was I think legitimately the first thing I ever saw, which is kind of ironic, was Dean doing his farewell address to the crowd after they did their match, their 2 out of 3 fall match, and then yeah, it was great. And then I got to see it in full later on, a little bit down the road. Then in WCW, all of his stuff with all of his matches with Rey Mysterio and Dean and Benoit and Jericho, just all the stuff he did, just tons of great work. I mean, WCW at that time was stacked as far as a promotion went, as far as a wrestling company went. It was such a great show. And then eventually he moved on. He, Dean, Perry Saturn, and Benoit, they all jumped ship to WWE as the Radicals. And then eventually they all splintered off doing their own things. And Eddie he was given the Latino Heat gimmick, which he really leaned into. They gave him China as a partner in the thing. And it really took off. And then eventually he started doing the lie, cheat, and steal thing, which really took off. I mean, Eddie had a great personality. I got to know him a little bit as a young student in the wrestling business. Actually, I've told the story before, but when I first got into the wrestling business, when I first moved from New York to Florida, I had been here for about a week and a half. Uh, I had to set up a day to meet Dean. If you don't know, quick as I'm telling all these names, and some of your eyes may be glazing over. Some of you are like, "Oh, Dan, what the hell are you talking about?" When I wrestled, my trainer was Dean Malenko. If you don't know who he is, go look him up. The internet's a wonderful thing. You can find all these things out. I'm not going to go into his whole backstory and his history, but he had a school here in Tampa, Florida. I moved here from New York to train here. Um, and I set up a date to go meet him. He always wanted to do like not so much an orientation, but he just wanted to talk to people before they stepped into one of his rings. He wanted to make sure they understood everything and what he expected and what they could expect from him, so on and so forth. So I go to the school, and of course, like a proper dirtbag, I'm there in my sleeveless body count shirt, and just I'm just looking like a true dirtbag. And I walk in, and the first person I see is I walk in, I'm looking around, I'm kind of like tunnel vision looking for Dean, and the first person that greets me is Eddie Guerrero. And in true idiot fashion, I kind of half-ass blew him off because I saw Dean. I was like, oh, hey, hey," and didn't, I just lost all, between being nervous being there and just like, okay, this is the person I have to talk to. I just kind of was stupid, and fortunately he didn't think too much of it. I mean, he probably just, I think he just treated it like, oh, okay, he was a very easygoing guy. As I got to know him over the years, the little bit that I did, and yeah. So then I would run into him many times after that at the school because he was Dean was one of his best friends in the business. They were best friends and partners in the business, the two of them and Benoit. And so he was always around. I mean, he'd jump in the ring with the more advanced students and work out with them. They'd all get to, get a little more hands-on experience. With me, I didn't really ever get into the ring with him. It was more he would he'd give us all advice, and some of the newer guys, he would just kind of talk to us and stuff like that. So that's where he kind of picked stuff up from him. And yeah, he was cool. But if you were the way things were like when I was in the business here in Tampa, uh, Dean and Steve Kern used to have a school together where, and there were two rings there. One was Dean's, one was Kern's, but everybody could use either ring. But we would go in early in the evening from like 5:30 in the afternoon till like 7, 8 o'clock at night. And then Kern's guys would all be there later into the evening. And that was how the training schedules were set up. So Eddie was always around. So if you were around at that time, if you were ever within the perimeter of being one of Dean's guys or Kern's guys, you would run into Eddie. And if you were fortunate enough, you got into the ring with him. So that's kind of partially why I wore this shirt. It was kind of it's a homage to one of his shirts from WCW, except it doesn't have the cheat to win on the back, which was a thing that he did with his cousin or his nephew Chavo when they had a really good program back then with the friggin' hobby horse Pepe and then putting in a wood chipper and just all sorts of crazy stuff like that. It was good stuff. But yeah, man, he unfortunately November 13th, 2005. They found him unresponsive in his hotel room in Minnesota. I think he had a heart attack. Just from the years he had a very well documented substance abuse problem, and using performance enhancers and just being on the road, probably diet, stress, and things like that. He was not kind to himself over the years, so his heart just gave out. He finally his heart had no more to give, and he just went, and that was that. Unfortunately, that was that. And Chavo found him, and it sucked, and it left a lot of people. It impacted a lot of people, and who knew him or got to know him, because he was a super cool guy, very very nice, very humble. Never really wanted to be treated as a celebrity of any kind. But I know at his highest point, after he had won the title from Brock Lesnar, I ran into him in public, and he was just trying to have a quiet night out with his wife. And it's hard because he was jacked. You just don't appreciate how big some of like the pro wrestlers are. And Eddie was huge, even though he was a shorter guy. He was just a ginormous guy with just massive arms. So he just stood out in the crowd, and he's trying to have a nice quiet night out with his wife, and some Spanish girls ran into him. They just, Eddie, Eddie, Eddie. And he was, gosh, but he was always just trying to go about his day, and not really have, have, have it be too big of a deal. But sometimes, you're on TV all the time, and it's hard not to have that happen. But yeah, he was a real cool guy. It was a really it was a big loss in the business. And I don't know too many people that did not like or appreciate or respect Eddie. So rest in peace, Eddie Guerrero. It's a little over 20 years since his passing. And again, I should have my head examined for forgetting that, because he was such a cool guy, and such a he did have a little, not a huge piece, but not to, like, I'm not trying to make it sound like he and I were buddies and everything like that, but I did get to know him a little bit. So he's one of those guys that just being a Malenko guy, it was always one of those things where Eddie was always one of those guys that was like at top of my list of guys. So I feel like an idiot for not remembering that he had died. I knew it was around this time of the year, but I just didn't, you get caught up doing life things and everything like that. So anyhow, so that was that. And moving on to the next thing, I'll try to not have this be such a try to move this on into a not so dour kind of thing. So next up, actually, I'll kind of be a little, not quite so dour, but a little bit more on the not sad news, not tragic news, but unfortunate news, I guess would be the best way of putting it. So this gentleman here, his name is Luke Menzies. He wrestled as Ridge Holland in WWE. He just got let go. It was very infamous firing recently. They were not renewing his contract. He had been with WWE for, I'm gonna say like 5-6 years, something like that, in the developmental program. Uh, but he just never really caught on. Little got himself into, I think, in my opinion, got himself into a little bit of trouble because he was in the ring. They moved him up to the main roster eventually, and he'd been plagued with injuries a couple of times. He'd been on the shelf for injuries. Finally made it to the main roster. They gave him a gimmick, stuck him in a group. The group was feuding with the New Day, which was one of their big popular acts at the time. He's in the ring doing a singles match with Big E Langston, who's one of the most. You talk about Eddie being beloved. Big E's one of the most beloved guys in the business. I mean, there isn't one person who hasn't had there's not too many people that have bad things to say about him. He's just a very, very nice, genuine guy, from what I've gathered. Never met him, but everybody who I know who has met him, they're like, yeah, oh, Biggie's the best. So he goes and he's trying to do an overhead belly to belly on the outside of the ring, and for whatever reason, they just could not get the timing or the weight distribution correct, and Biggie just clunked right on the top of his head, uh, broke his C1 vertebrae, which could have killed him, but it didn't. Fortunately, he's built like a tank, and so it didn't kill him, but it pretty much ended his career. So whether anybody says it or not, my opinion is that he was on the chopping. Luke, his ring name was Ridge Holland. Ridge was on the chopping block from that point on. They couldn't outright fire him right there or not, I think that they renewed his contract at a reduced rate so it would look like they weren't trying to like retaliate against him for what I'm sure some people figured was the greenhorn hurting one of their most popular guys in the company. Again, just my opinion, but I tend to think that I might be right on this. But he took the gig at a reduced salary, and then this past go around with the contract, they just didn't renew his contract. So he got on social media because, of course, everybody does, and he started complaining about his job, which was, it doesn't matter what job you're on, you start complaining about social media, somebody's going to catch wind of it, and someone's not going to be happy. So they were like a week or so before his contract was going to expire, like 10 days or something. They're like, okay, screw this guy. And they just let him go. But he was complaining about not, how to pay his bills. And he's already out with a foot injury. And now he's got to get neck surgery done. But the point being, the whole reason for all this is that he got his neck surgery done. This is a video on X that he posted. There's no audio to it. But as you can see, like he was saying, he had two collapsed discs in his neck, resulting in nerve impingement. So probably his arms and/or legs were going tingly. So he did a disc replacement surgery. I don't know. I don't know if he got a. I'm not certain if he got a proper fusion done. If he got an actual fusion surgery done, because that's what I had. I had two discs fused in my I had my C6 and C7 fused after a match gone awry. He might have, if this is a disc replacement thing, he might have gotten the artificial disc replacement, the ADR surgery that they had suggested to me. But at the time, after going to a couple of doctors and getting second and third opinions, they said, you're really not a candidate for that type of surgery. So I don't even know why that was recommended to you. But he might have gotten that done, which it tends to, you don't have to, it's not such a permanent thing. You can still get the fusion surgery if the ADR doesn't work. I know with me, they wanted to do an ADR plus a fusion hybrid thing, but I really wasn't interested in them experimenting on me. So I just went and got the traditional surgery done. But yeah, from the sounds of it, he's it's a success and he's going to be on the mend. Best thing that I could tell Luke is to just take your time recouping from it. Follow all the advice of your doctors and your rehab people. If at all, I know he was complaining about money issues, but if at any point in time you can maybe finagle getting whatever sort of regenerative medicine, because I'm sure since the time I've gotten my surgery done, I'm sure all the stem cell stuff and all that is working out. It's way better than it was back then. If you can get that done, I'm sure that would help with recovery. I know a few people have talked about having injuries not not being as pervasive, and healing a lot faster by incorporating that. But again, I think it's kind of expensive, and I don't know how what insurances carry what. But I know when I was getting my stuff done, I don't think it was. I know it wasn't covered by my insurance, so I don't know how expensive it would have been. So I didn't even bother looking into it. But yeah, just take it easy is the best thing I can tell you. And then other than that, not to be a doomsayer, but you're never going to be the same. I mean, when you get a neck surgery done, you just any cervical, any issues like that, or lumbar or thoracic, you're just never going to be the same. If you have spinal issues and then you end up having to get surgery on it, you're never the same person. You're never the same when you get any type of surgery done, but especially with something like that. But just, take it slow, take it easy, and start slow and taper off as far as the recovery goes, and then you'll be right as rain at some point. But yeah, man. So that was another one, another wrestling related thing, and then my final wrestling related thing, which I thought was a hoot and a half. So Bret Hart did an interview recently in Montreal on a show called the Johnny Pro Show, and he caused a fair bit of controversy with his statements. I'm hoping that I'm hoping this channel isn't going to do anything like popping me for playing his stuff. Trying to give full attribution to the Johnny Pro Show. But Brett was talking about, they brought him there to talk to a Montreal crowd about the Montreal screw job, which is where they famously changed the finish of his match with Shawn Michaels and took the belt off him. It's been it kind of it launched the Mr. McMahon character, sent Brett to WCW, where unfortunately he literally got kicked out of the business by Goldberg, and he's just Brett's one of the more legendary figures in the business, but he's definitely a very bitter person, and he will let people know that who he does and does not like, as he does in this one. He didn't bury too many people in this interview, but he mostly stuck the focus of his ire on Vince McMahon and Shawn Michaels, and this was the commentary that got him into a little bit of I won't say hot water, but people were really talking it up. All the podcasters, big and small, were getting into this one. So I will try to transform this content as much as I can. And yeah, here we go. So this is what he was saying.
I think, and I'm trying not to be so much controversial, but I think
famous last words.
I didn't realize, or actually I did realize a long time ago. I thought about it back in 1997 when it was all happening. I remember going when Shawn, if you remember, forfeited the belt on Monday Night Raw and retired to go find his smile somewhere. And really,
what he's referencing there is Shawn Michaels famously gave up his title on TV to go find his smile. But really what had happened is he was at a bar, and back then he was a bit of a party animal and kind of a jerk off, which is something he's talked about, and many people have talked about. And he was just a dick, and he was popping off and in a bar, and a bunch of Marines met him outside and kicked the shit out of him. And that's basically what happened. So he left because he got tuned up pretty good. And I think it was funny about that story is I think Sean Waltman, 123 Kid, and Davy Boy, British Bulldog, were there. And Davey couldn't help him because he was in the back seat of whatever car they had. And I think it was the story, if I remember correctly, is it was a 2-seater. So he couldn't get out from the back seat. So he just kind of got stuck in the car and couldn't help fend off the attackers. But I don't know. That's wrestling stories are like fish tales sometimes, so you never know. But so that's kind of what he's referencing here.
Like that, and when all that happened, I remember in the dressing room when Vince told everybody that Sean was going to forfeit the belt because he had what was his knee or something. I can't remember what. I think it was his knee. And then Sean, I remember when Sean, he was crying in the ring. Sean was crying in the ring, and the tears were in his eyes and all that. And I just remember Vince. I was watching on the monitor in the back area with Vince, and me and Undertaker looked at each other, and he rolled his eyes that this whole thing was a bunch of bullshit and that there was nothing wrong with Sean, especially when you saw Sean. Sean, if you remember, he went to the corner and did a standing backflip after he forfeited the belt because of his knee injury. And I'm watching this and he does a standing backflip.
Probably not the best way to keep the illusion. I thought it was funny that he mentions Undertaker because he seems to be very close to Undertaker, and I thought it was funny because I was watching some old Survivor Series clips leading up to Survivor Series was this past weekend, and it was on Saturday, and I was watching a clip from Undertaker's channel where he was showing his debut because he debuted at a Survivor Series. It was the $1 Million Team, Rhythm and Blues, which was Honky Tonk Man, Greg Valentine, in a ridiculous jet black pompadour mullet deal. It was a very glorious hairstyle. You should certainly check it out. And Ted DiBiase, and then their mystery partner versus the Dream Team, which was the American Dream, doth the road, baby, with one of the most amazing theme songs in the history of the business. And it was Hard Foundation, Brett, and Jim the Anvil, and Coco Beware. And then the mystery partner for the $1 Million Team was The Undertaker. And it was kind of interesting watching this and listening to it, and then seeing that the first person that Undertaker ever locked up with, ever touched in a WWE ring was Bret Hart. So I thought that was kind of cool and kind of neat. So they seem to have some sort of special bond happening throughout the years. And I don't think Undertaker ever bought any of Shawn Michaels' bullshit back in the day. And I don't think he really cared for him that much. I think nowadays they all get along for the most part. Bret doesn't really get along. He gets along with everyone as much as he's going to get along with people. But for the most part, yeah, he doesn't. I still don't think he thinks too fondly of Shawn Michaels. But I think Undertaker and Shawn Michaels get along, and the clique and all that sort of thing. They've kind of let bygones be bygones, I think, for the most part. But anyhow, we're moving on.
Somersault off the top and lands right in the middle of the ring. And I'm going, you can't do that with a bad knee. Like, this is all bullshit. And I didn't remember Undertaker looked at me and he pulled his eyelid down like this, like it was, he lost some part of himself, or he was going to go find his smile. And I remember Vince had the tear roll down his cheek. And I remember watching it and going, I think there's more going on here between these two guys. Honestly, and I'm not trying to be, I'm just being honest and blunt, but I don't know. I suspected, and now I really have serious, I think that Sean and Vince were sleeping with each other.
So those are the comments that got everybody all worked up. Now, my opinion, and he extrapolates further on this thought, and he just goes on for another minute or so. But Brett was bullshitting everybody. I mean, he's got a very dry Canadian sense of humor, and he was. I think he used to go on Mad TV back when he was in the WWF at the time. So he's got a very good sense of humor. It's very dry, very very straightforward. But he was he was BSing her, just taking the piss out of everybody, and just kind of leaning into it. And there's always been like in the internet and the dirt sheets, there was always those rumors of people suggesting that. But so I think he just leaned into it and went from there. And half of the people, all the wrestling podcast people, they all lost their gosh damn minds about it. But it's funny because Cornette was the only other person that I saw who was like, Brett's got to be bullshitting everybody. There's no way he believes that. And I agree with Cornette. I thought the exact same thing because I saw so many people making a big deal about this. I was like, let me go watch this. So I watch it. I was like, he's just bullshitting everybody. I mean, he's playing up to the crowd, and that's what he's just playing to the audience, I thought. But yeah, it's just my opinion. So that was another one. And then so that's all the wrestling stuff that I got. And now we'll move on to, and we'll try to be quick here. Move on to a couple of the metal stories that I have for you. So one of the ones, a couple controversial ones, was a lot of people probably heard about this recently. It happened a couple months ago with Cradle of Filth. A couple of the members got let go from the band, and there was some back and forth in the media between them and Danny. And now a bunch of the members are suing Danny Filth and his management company, which is run by uh, Dez from Coal Chamber and his wife Anastasia. What I thought was interesting about that is that they didn't do any proofreading because they said run by Coal Chamber frontman Des Fafara and Anastasia Fafara. So I'm presuming they meant to say wife. But it is keyboardist and vocalist Zoe Marie Fedorov and her boyfriend, husband, also the guitar player in the band, Merrick Smyrda. They filed a lawsuit, as well as Paul Allender, who played guitar, Richard Shaw, who played guitar, Lindsay Matheson, who was keyboardist and vocalist. What years was she in the band? A little bit before Zoe, and then model Baxter, Sasha Massacre, who apparently did a couple of their newer videos, from what I gathered, and they're citing a variety of reasons why they're suing, most of which is copyright infringement, misappropriation of likeness and merchandise, defamation, which I'm presuming is, I think at one point Danny Filth called Zoe and Merrick a couple of drunks and how their relationship was toxic. I don't know what unjust enrichment means. I'm presuming that whereas they weren't getting paid, somebody else was getting paid way more. So maybe that's what that is. Unpaid royalties and for live shows and albums, unauthorized use of copyrighted works. I think that is the. I want to say that is who's. Somebody's claiming that something about some use of sigils or images or something like that. And then Sasha Baxter, she was claiming she never got paid for the videos that she did for Cradle of Filth. So we'll see what happens. Apparently, so this is what they want to see come out of this. They want Cradle of Filth to be held responsible for misappropriating their likeness, resulting in the band having to stop selling any merchandise and destroy any remaining stock. That's kind of crazy. They want Danny Filth to replace any broken or missing audio equipment, and then they want money for financial loss and emotional duress, and to have their lawyers' fees paid by Danny Filth and his management company, Oracle Management. So yeah, it's kind of an interesting one. We'll see how that one plays out, but that was the update to what's happening with the whole Cradle of Filth situation that kind of popped off a few months ago, and this is the next step in the evolution of that story. So we'll keep an eye on that. We can all keep an eye on that one, see where it goes. And then next up, this was kind of the big story of the week, from what I could see, is this is band Vitriol. I don't really know them that well. The only thing I really know about them is they put an album out last year that a lot of people liked, and I was working with a guy last year who really liked the band Vitriol, and he talked about them. Besides Tool and a couple other bands of that nature, that was the only band I ever heard him mention by name. So anyhow, the long and short of it is that they were out on tour, and they did a show. They went back to the hotel, and this here is Kyle Rasmussen. He's the founding and at this point only member of the band. And according to him, he did an Instagram thing, again the social media thing, and he started talking about doing nose beers at the hotel, him and the band. And of course, while he's trying to be too cute by half and calling it nose beers, he slipped up a couple times and said cocaine. So he was talking about them doing coke at the hotel. And then he's apparently got anger issues. So one thing led to another, and he started getting pissy with the rest of the band. So apparently the next day, his guitarist, his bassist, and drummer all quit the band, and apparently they just left his girlfriend and their dog. They left them at a gas station in Vermont. Some people were reporting upstate New York, but most of the reports I saw from were Vermont to New York. And then so I don't know, because Vincent Zetti, which is the he's the drummer. This is what he was saying: onwards and upwards, played some sick death metal and got to meet even sicker people. Thanks for all the messages. Da da da. Just trying to get back to Portland from New York. So I don't know if that's what they were talking about, but so I don't know if they did a show in Vermont, and I don't know if they did a show in Vermont and then they went to New York and that's where they left him. But they left him, his girlfriend, their dog. They just abandoned them, and then they effed off and went back to Portland, Oregon. So Rasmussen there, he goes out and he sets up a GoFundMe and asks for $5,000 to get the three of them back to Portland from the East Coast. And last I checked, it was up to almost 11 grand, which honestly, people, you do whatever you want with your money, but when somebody's talking about that they're in a hotel room doing coke and it gets to the point that that him and his band are getting into a fight and people are getting stranded on the side of the road, maybe don't give that person 11 G's. That seems like a awful use of money, but I know people are very, very kind and generous and charitable. So that's what some people did. Um, but yeah, so I'm assuming that he's back in Portland at this point. Him and the girlfriend and the dog, and you feel bad for the dog, but the people, that's if you got anger issues and then you combine it with substance abuse issues and you just whatever else is going on, then I mean I guess this stuff is bound to happen. But I found it kind of interesting because I looked at the band's metal archives and I thought it was funny how uh, you look at Vitriol and you see the cavalcade of former members and past people who did live for them, and there's a little bit of crossover here, but by and large, there's been a lot of people in this band. See, you tend to think you have to believe where there's smoke, there's fire, and maybe that sort of thing is going on. But either way, whatever. I don't really listen to them. I know people like them, but beyond that, I don't really know too much about them. But that was kind of like one of the big stories of the week that came out as on the metal front. So anyhow, we'll close this out here with a couple of releases that came out this week, and then I'll give you all a break from looking at my ugly mug for a little while, and then based on the timing here, go take a breather, go get a drink, and go watch Shredbeard's show because that's coming up. So closing out here, we're gonna talk about, or I'm gonna talk about. It's just me. I shouldn't say we. You're not very helpful. You don't do much. But a couple new releases. So first off, I'm not going to talk too much about this one. Uh, by now, you've probably seen it, but I did a review of it. But Perdition Temple's new album came out. Malign Apotheosis came out this past Friday from Hell's Headbangers. Fantastic album. Definitely go check it out. But that's one of the better releases that came out this past week. I know tons of stuff comes out every week, but that was one of the better ones that came out this past week. Next up on the list of albums that came out that was pretty good in my opinion was heavy metal, speed metal band from Croatia called Speedclaw. They're on Dying Victims Productions. The album is Stardust. Very cool stuff. I'll play a quick little clip of this song here, Queen of the Night, and kind of get a general idea of what they sound like. Dying Victims is a very cool record label. We got Pagan Altar as this band, Sadistic Note Diet for that album was really good. The band's nothing more metal band than the other one. These are from Colombia, Brazil, Central South American band.
Long, cruel woman walking down the streets. All eyes on her, careless who she meets.
But yeah, that's kind of you get the gist of what the band sounds like. But very cool stuff. Definitely going to pick that up at some point. Give it a couple more listens, and then yeah, we'll see how it shakes up at the end of the year because it's getting to that point that it's the end of the year. And then finally, yeah, I've even seen people already putting out their best of lists, but I tend to wait when I do mine. That's one of my favorite things to do. So I tend to wait towards the end of the year to do that. And then finally, this one also came out this past week, and very very good black metal from Portugal. The band Ire. I think there's a couple ways to pronounce it, but it's in the key of Twilight. It's on Signal Rex Records. That's the album cover. It's a concept album about, I think it's about Lucifer, if I'm not mistaken. Very cool album. The artwork is done by Belial Necroarts, he's been popping up a lot lately. Actually, the album cover for Malign Apotheosis, he did that. He did another one for the band Ordeals. Yeah, he's been popping up on my radar quite a bit as far as being an artist and some of the stuff that I listen to. But yeah, very cool stuff. Ray have been around for a long, long time. Been out, I think, for since the late '90s or something like that. But they've been around a long, long time. But very cool.
Now it's time to leave the serpent. I let the candle once again. And that's me, why?
Yeah, man, but very cool stuff. That's another one. It gets hard getting a hold of Signal Rec stuff for a little bit here stateside. It's too expensive, in my opinion, to get it from them directly as much as I'd like to. But yeah, man. So that's a couple of new releases that came out this past week. I would suggest checking them out if you have the time or if you have the the interest. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So that is my Moonshine Metal news and reviews for this week. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you stick around to watch some of Shred's show if you can. Hope you've stuck around to watch this, or at least peruse through it a little bit. Maybe go check out my review on Perdition Temple, some of the other crap I got in my back catalog. I got a couple more things coming up here in the near future. Couple recommendation things, couple recommendation lists. I got a review coming up. And then beyond that, eventually, towards the end of the month, this upcoming month, I'll do my best of for the year, and we'll go from there. And whatever other news, notes, and ideas I have in mind, we'll go from there. So yeah, that's what I got for you, everybody. This is Dan Moonshine for Moonshine Talking, saying stay sick, stay heavy, stay brutal. Always tuck a chin upon impact. Don't forget to breathe. Everyone have a good one. Take it easy. Have a good week, and I will catch you on the next one. Later.